Now, we all know on RC Racing TV that I like to get geeky with the cars, and this is my first time at a large-scale touring car event. So I wanted to find out a bit more about the cars. They look big from the outside, they're definitely big on the inside. First up, the body shell. Looks important. How important is it in terms of the handling for the cars?
The body shell is one of the most important things. A lot of guys is using now the Kilium BMW, and it seems also like working very fine. For me, always the Alpha is the best because it has the most steering. And then of course there's different types like lightweight and super lightweight and normal. I prefer to use the super lightweight, especially in high traction, like here. Or normally at the Euros here it's a little bit different, but normally at the Euros we use the 1mm body. And normally we use the lightweight, which is 1.5 for gaining a little bit more traction.
It's like any scale of racing really, they do make a difference to the handling of the car. I choose the 156 Alpha. Generally it's got a bit more of a splitter on the front, a bit lower at the front, gives you a bit more steering. But you can use different shells to change the balance. Like you say, they have to come from the homologation list, but a lot of drivers choose the Alpha, I think, for this reason.
Actually, I don't test so much about the body shells anymore because we use now the Alpha almost all the time. But the weight of the body shell is pretty important because if you go to a track with low traction, the body shell can help the traction to improve. And on high traction, if the body shell is too heavy, you would either grip roll or go too slow.
You've got a wing on the back of the car as well. Is that adjustable?
It is adjustable. You can adjust the angle of the main plate of the wing. But we are quite set in the rules. It has to be a certain height. It can't be above a certain width as well. And you have to set it in a certain position on the car. So it's quite precise. But it does have an effect for sure. So you can play with them a little bit.
Okay, so that is a big impact then. What about the next most obvious thing? These tyres on the car. How much thought has gone into those?
We use a lot of practice to test the different compounds and different shapes. And we end up with the A compound for the front and the B compound for the rear. But actually, I don't know how it will react on 30 minutes because I never tried to use them for 30 minutes.
For me, I've been on with the GRP 4As. They're working pretty well and the wear looks good too. So I think I can run for the long race as I am really, so it should be all right.
Now we've heard that obviously you've got a brand new tyre here for this event. Presumably the development that's gone into that is the same as in any sort of full-scale racing where the manufacturer will look at the data they've got from the last races, look at the track conditions perhaps as well they expect to see, and then make a decision based on that?
I think so, very much. I mean, we did some testing at a Grand Prix a few weeks ago, and they brought the tyre here very similar. We made a change slightly to the profile of the tyre, rounded the corners a little just to give it make it a bit more forgiving, to make it a little easier to drive.
So when you go to a new track, for example, what's the first thing you do with your tyres? Do you have a standard thing you'll start with, or will you look at the track and make a decision based on that?
No, I mean, in old days, we always just have two compounds, and we always start with the softer one, and when the traction gets higher, we go with the harder one in the rear. So that was pretty easy. But at the moment now, I'm pretty much not sure because we have the new tyre, and we have no experience with that. I mean, they have the super soft tyre, which is the X tyre, and they think this was the tyre we were going to use here for qualifying, but it only lasts like 3 minutes. So it's really hard to get the tyre working now for 10 minutes for us, but I think it's because of the lack of experience right now.
And we've seen lots of guys with tyre warmers on the tyres before they go out for runs to get some heat in the tyre. Is that what that's about?
The car is simply not working the first minute without the tyre warmer. And also, if you don't use the tyre warmers, the outside of the tyre, like the first layer of rubber, gets heated, but can't stick to the rest of the tyre, so it's simply grinding off. Like you see in the Formula when they use the super soft tyre, the whole tyre is just like rubbering or grinding, like you call it in English. And this is because the outside of the tyre gets much warmer than just the next layer of rubber. So this is very important to use the tyre heaters all the time.
So lots of technology there in what looks like a fairly standard part of the car. What about the thing that makes the car actually go though? The most important part probably, the engine.
A 23cc two-stroke, normal unleaded with pre-mixed two-stroke. They're producing in the region of 5.5 to 6 horsepower, I'd say. Obviously, like we've said before, out here it's quite warm, so you've got to run them quite rich. You do lose a bit of power, especially in the heat. So we're probably a little bit more restricted than we would be in a cooler climate, but yeah, they're pretty good. They're only rear-wheel drive cars, so they can be a bit exciting.
This track is like a little bit strange, I think, because the straight power is of course very important, but also here because of the high temperature it's really hard to get the acceleration right. So what we have done, we have some special cooling system for the fuel and stuff inside the car, and this helps us to improve the the heat of the engine, because like yesterday where it was 35 degrees, everybody was struggling with the heat of the engine, and when the engine is running fine, the fuel consumption is really bad for 30 minutes. So
as it gets hotter, the engines get hotter, they produce less power.
It does work like that. It's kind of managing the setup of the carburettor, which is obviously all adjustable, to keep the temperatures down, but also keep your performance there. But inevitably, you do lose power during the run, and the runs that are in the middle of the day, for sure, you've got less power, 100%.
So, the engines are affected by the heat, just like engines in full-size cars. What about the other thing that we see being affected in full-size racing by heat as well? The braking systems. Hydraulic brake system on all four corners of the car. How does that work?
It's much the same as in your road car. It's a normal hydraulic system. You've got a master cylinder worked off the servos. Like you say, calipers on all corners, disc on all corners. That's also adjustable from the transmitter. So personally, I do it with the buttons on the transmitter. I can wind my brake balance on the rear up and down. You may adjust it in the race, again with temperature. As they warm up, you might want to be a little bit higher or lower. But it's much full-size race car technology really in these things. So.
The brakes we normally never touch for the last 4 years have always been the same. And also the brake balance, when you get the right balance on one track, you can change a little to get the car to stop faster or slower, but nothing like you change 10% on the transmitter. It's not like that.
The worst thing with them is that the balance changes. So when you first go out, your brakes might be nice, and then your rear might come up a bit more. You've got to change it down, or the other way around. Some guys will set them when they're hot, and when you first go out, you've not got much, and you've got to wait for them to warm up and hope they warm up in the warm-up period. But it's all a bit of a balance, really, to be honest.
Everybody here is also fighting with the brakes because only very few guys figure this out, but it seems like after 5 minutes, you're just losing brake pressure. So actually what I've done, I built a brand new set of brakes on the front, which I never tried before. So for me, it's like a big gamble here. But also I see a lot of guys is working with the servos because they think maybe they become too hot. And so it's really, yeah. But here it's also very, very important with the brakes because you have a lot of stop and go corners, but also you have two fast sweepers, the end of the straight and onto the straight. And these two corners, you don't want the car to block all four tires because then you simply lose the balance in the car. But this also very, 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 very hard to get right, I think.
You've had 10-minute practice sessions, you've had 10-minute qualifying heats, we move into the finals, you say 20 or 30 minutes for the finals. Everything that we just said, does that more or less go out the window and you start again?
It almost does, but you're even calculating now. I mean, like the last run I did a fuel calculation to work out my fuel consumption. You're going to be doing that now with a view of what you can do in the finals. They are very borderline in 30 minutes in this heat for fuel consumption. I'm sure you'll see some people run out. So we're looking to the finals just to see where we are and how much we can push. And yeah, you've got to look ahead, otherwise it'll bite you in the end.
So we can see lots of technology, lots of strategy going into racing these cars. Stay tuned to F1.ws throughout tomorrow to find out who does get bitten.